All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Art at Home. My name is Liz, and I want to start out, as always, by thanking the Hoboken Public Library for their wonderful support and advocacy of the arts during our time of sheltering at home during the COVID pandemic. We are celebrating Black History Month in this month of February 2022, and I believe we are on our third Black Artist of Focus for the month of February. He's a very fascinating man. We're going to talk briefly about his life. I'm going to give you some biographical information, and then we're going to look at images of his work. We'll talk about that, and I will make a suggestion for an art project that you can all create. Because my goal is always to get you doing your own thing and expressing your own self. And I hope you're all feeling well. Oh, and a bit of advertisement first. My show in New York City called Solo Duo is coming up to its final days. There will be a closing reception, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, February 26th, from 3 to 5 p.m. It is a Saturday afternoon, and I will be there. So I would love to see as many of you as can come. I think it's going to be a fun time. And the final advertisement, my husband, Eben Doy, is going to be selling some of his beautiful glassware at a local store called West Elm, which is located on Willow Avenue in Hoboken between 14th and 15th Street. He will be there starting at 12 noon. And they're beautiful objects and reasonably priced. Any of you who have taken Ibu's glassmaking workshops, you have an idea of the kinds of gorgeous glass objects he makes. All right, onwards and upwards to Black History Month. Our artist for today is Adam Pendleton. Adam Pendleton was born in 1984. He is a conceptual artist, and he's known for a multidisciplinary practice. He does painting, silkscreen, collage, video, performance, and word art. So he's multi-talented and uses many different media to express himself. His work often involves the investigation of language and the recontextualization of history through appropriated imagery. So that's a lot of verbiage to mean basically he takes the printed word and makes it visual. He uses primarily other people's language and words and creates art from it. He most closely aligns himself with another movement of art we've talked about, and that is the Dada movement and Dadaism. So I'm going to talk very briefly about Dadaism, but Dadaism evolved in Europe at the end of World War I, and Dadaism was about fighting against or standing against the brutal violence and absurdity of World War I and the horrendous loss of life through war. It was also started by artists who were very anti-capitalism and anti the bourgeoisie lifestyle. They were very left-wing, radical, left-wing political people. And in the visual art realm, the Dadaists were doing art that I guess could be typified as nonsensical, art that poked fun at the establishment, and art that seemed absurd and a bit weird and crazy. And out of the Dada movement came the birth of collage and eventually, really, abstract expressionism and some of the major art movements in the United States, and Cubism. All right, and Pendleton has written what one might call a manifesto called The Black Dada Reader, in which he has created a book that is a visual image or compilation of words that he's taken from writers in the past and now in recent history, including the Black Lives Matter movement and the recent George Floyd protest movements. He's taken language from protests, from Black political writers like Amira Baraka, and he's created a visual text through collage and photography that he calls the Black Dada Reader. And we're going to look at some of those visual representations of what he's created. So he often juxtaposes imagery, language, music, and concepts from a variety of subjects, such as philosophy and important historical movements, as I mentioned. With these, he creates complex works that allow for multiple interpretations. And also, as I mentioned, he's often focused on significant moments in Black American history, such as the civil rights movement of the 1960s and the recent Black Lives Matter movement that emerged following the murder of Trayvon Martin. So he's quite young. He was signed by Pace Gallery when he was only 28, which makes him one of the youngest artists in the history of that gallery to gain their representation. He moved to New York in 2002 at the ripe old age of 18, and he knew at that young age that he wanted to be an artist. So he has been on this artistic track from a very young age. I forget what year, but Time magazine named him the Artist of the Year fairly recently. So he's gained quite a bit of critical acclaim in his new career. I've actually seen his work. He was in a wonderful show at the New Museum called I think it was called Black Grief and Grievance, which I recommended to you folks last year. All right. Ready to look at his work? Does anybody have any further information to add about Adam Pendleton? You can always put stuff in the chat box. All right, let's begin. We're gonna now go visual. Everyone able to see this particular image? Yes, big enough? Okay, good. It's a little blurry. Again, it's a digital photograph, so unfortunately it gets very pixelated. I have some close-ups of this too, but this is the kind of stuff he does. He does multiples, he does installations, primarily in black and white, a lot of collage that he paints on top of. Let's get a better picture. Let's move to this one. Everyone see this? So now you can see more closely his use of text. He seems to focus more on individual letters than on whole words. I watched an interview of his. I meant to send you all the link to that. I'll send you the link later this week, but there is a rather long, hour-long interview of him on YouTube where he talks about during the George Floyd protests this past summer in New York City, he noticed 4 letters that seemed to be prominently displayed all over New York City due to the George Floyd protests, and they were the letters A, B, and AC. And he uses them quite a bit in his recent work. I think the use of white and black makes his work very strong and stark. Anyone else have any thoughts? Very bold, very graphic. Let's look at another one. So this is a close-up of that installation that I showed you first. You can see more use of the words. And here he actually has put the letters together as words, but now I am. There's another great African-American artist, Glenn Ligon, who also uses text. And Ligon only uses text in his works. If you've never seen his work, I'll put his name in the chat in a moment. Glenn Ligon does phenomenal work. Ligon often uses text from slave narrative writings. They're very powerful pieces. You can see that Pendleton also uses African imagery and iconography in his work. He will frequently play with space and size. For example, this was an installation at the New Museum in Manhattan where he did a large piece, a wall-sized piece, and then he installed smaller images on top of the wall piece. I love this playing around with scale and space. It's kind of beautiful. It's a thing I kind of do in my own work. So I think here is this major question yet again. What is art? Can words become something other than their meaning? And I think that this is Pendleton's whole approach in his art. Can words become different when they become shapes, when they become visual objects and not just letters and words? Do they acquire more power Do they acquire less power? What happens to words and letters when seen in a different context? Definitely loves texture. So these are pages in his Black Dada reader. And he's produced it in several different ways. He's produced it as a ring binder, and this is a hardback edition. No rings visible. It really feels a lot like African fabric to me as well. And look at this, talking about words. And the juxtaposition of the letters with the geometric form. In his interview, he also talks about abstraction and realism. And he talks about how he likes to play with these two things, and he likes to try and redefine what they are. He thinks of abstraction as a form of freedom, that there are no strictures. When he practices abstraction, there are no strictures or barriers in what he's doing. And he works in all different media. Sometimes he works on mylar, sometimes on paper, sometimes on canvas. He uses chalk, he uses paint. Sometimes he outlines. I love the way he plays with black and white. Gosh, no comments today? This is unusual. It's a sleepy Wednesday.
This is Robin. Is all of his work in black and white?
Primarily, I have one piece that I'm not even sure is his, Robin, that has some color in it.
Okay. It's interesting just to see that.
Yes.
Liz.
Here's one of his sculptures where he literally makes the letters three-dimensional and then works on top of the letters. Again, the words are not his own. I find that interesting too. He takes texts from other writers and philosophers, or he takes words and letters from things he sees during protests or on the street. I guess graffiti art. I love this one. It looks kind of like a gas mask, but it really is an African mask that he has abstracted in various ways. So this is 4 separate, he calls these drawings, not paintings. And here's a close-up of one of them. Love this. It's very cool composition. I love the contrast between the white textural effect and then the solid black of the mask. And even though it's solid, it's kind of transparent. You can definitely see through it. More work with letters. He loves texture. So here you can see more print media, not just letter imagery, but photographs. This appears to be African sculpture. And letters through which he uses the letters as negative space through which you can see. It's really beautiful. So here's the colored piece. I think that this is a performance piece of his. This may be he. I don't have a whole lot of explanation of this image. I'm sorry. But he does do performance work with music. Music is important to his artistic practice.
Liz, this is Fran.
Yes, Fran. You want me to go back to this picture?
No, I'm just want to talk about the words, because this is very inspired to me. Also, the black and white.
Yeah.
These are two elements that I feel very attracted to and never know how to use it. And so it's very inspiring to see it. It's very freeing to see someone using this, because usually we consider art things that are more like, I don't know, complicated to do. And it seems that this is so easy, but it's not. It's so powerful, and the words. So for
Right.
me, it's very inspiring to see simple elements combined to bring a strong message.
Nice. Yes, it looks like it should be simple to create something this strong, but in fact, it's not. And
It's
we're going
not,
to.
and there is like a lot of courage to do it in my mind, and to
Okay.
bring this as art, you know. For me, it's like, yes, this is art. For me, it's all beautiful, and I think it's good that we have this variety of stuff to see.
Okay. So again, thank you, Fran. So again, this is one of his pieces where he calls it wall art, but also with an installation of one of his smaller drawings on top. And here, certainly the text is easier to read and intentional. He definitely wants us to get the message in this one. And his use of black and white, dark and light, shadow is very powerful. The words are powerful, but he gives them even greater weight by the way he uses black and white. Prosmit, that was really nice observation. Thank you. Again, this is a beautiful, beautiful African sculpture. This comes from Benin. I've always loved this piece. So he appropriates from other places, but combines the images into his own art. Again, his use of words in a very deliberate way. Is it art?
I have a question,
Yes.
which I'll say I don't understand modern art to begin with, but when I look at this, like, are you supposed to try and figure out what these words are, like Mondrian? Like, you know, what is the point of this? Like, other people know what all these words mean?
Well, this is a really wonderful question. And as I always say, we never know what is inside the mind of the artist, but this is a group of names and words that for the most part are well known to people, but some of these names probably are obscure to people. And thinking about what Pendleton's whole concept is, I think he wants people to wonder, like you are wondering, what is this all about? He wants people to question, is this art? He wants people to learn more about what these names mean, who these people were, what they represent, and whether or not they would adopt the things that they stood for. So I think that's a great question. Is it art? Who are these people? Should we care about them? So this is a mixture of artists, philosophers, Black activists and leaders. This word mantan is, or name mantan, is a derogatory word used towards Black people. But here is Du Bois, who was a great African American leader. Sartre was a Western philosopher, French. So it's a mixture here. We all know who Jesus was.
Oh my God.
Mondrian, the painter.
Oh, that's a painter.
Yes. And I'm not sure who. Does anybody know who Trismegistus was? Because I don't. And there's a Mexican, I'm thinking this is an Aztec name that I don't know, Moctezuma here. So I think that Pendleton wants us to think and think hard. West, this could be Cornel West, the
We're
great
trying to-
African American scholar. So yeah,
Oh,
Can I offer the, I just looked up Trismegistus.
yeah. Who was
Huh.
it?
Okay, this is,
a man. These all seem to be men.
I also love that question. Thank you so much. Let me just pull it. Okay, because it kind of cut off, or I would have put it in the chat. Hermes Trismegistus, the Greek name for the Egyptian god Thoth, was the reputed author of treatises that have been preserved. Thoth was the scribe of the gods, the inventor of writing,
There you go.
and the painter of all the arts dependent upon writing. And then it kind of breaks, but I can, depending on, he was sometimes thought, let's see. Well, I'll send you the link.
Well, that makes a lot of sense with Pendleton and his ideas about using text as art, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. It really does. So I thought this was so interesting, and it's all because of the wonderful question, because I also was just struck reading and pausing and saying, okay, it's okay to just wonder about the way he has put these thoughts together.
Absolutely.
I guess, yeah, definitely it makes more sense, because when I look at it visually, I don't see art.
And that's okay.
Liz, Willie Best was an actor known as Sleep and Eat, and he was one of the first African-American film actors and comedians to become known. I just looked him up, Willie Best.
Thank you guys for doing all this research. Awesome.
Well, thank you, everyone.
And then I always go back to a field trip that I took to the Museum of Modern Art with some 6th graders. And we looked at a Mondrian painting, in fact, Broadway Boogie Woogie. And one of my, how shall I put it? One of my brighter students looked at it and said, anybody could do that. Why is that art? And the brilliant docent said to this child, the point is, not everybody did do it. Mondrian did. And that's what makes it art. And that's what earns it a place on the wall of the Museum of Modern Art. And in a way, that is true. I mean, Adam Pendleton is an incredible intellectual who is working with ideas that maybe you and I would not really think about on a daily basis. And he's presenting these thoughts in his head in a visual way. And maybe that's enough to make what he creates art. I don't know.
Liz, could I say something?
Sure.
I think it's also a matter of luck and timing.
Yes.
And I also believe that the artist has to be really good at selling themselves. You know, they
Well,
have to.
Go ahead, finish.
You know, the more I know about marketing and schmoozing, and I think that's a huge part of it. I think Andy Warhol, well, he was an incredibly talented artist, but he was also so good at marketing himself.
Well, I think that that has a lot to do with the way the art scene has evolved in the last 50 to 100 years, maybe. Yes, marketing has become a very important part in making yourself known in the art world. Absolutely.
So maybe it's not
That's
only
about
that he was the only one, the first one who did it, but maybe he was the first one who did it, who got to know the right people who purchased his art and
Who
talked
got
about
the
it.
recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's always an element of that. I do believe that's true. And talent. So yes, all of those things come into play. All right, so I'm gonna now just go through these quickly so that we can get to the project that I'm gonna recommend for you. You can see that similar elements keep reappearing in his work. This one's different. There's a bit of color in here. For those of you who are wondering why he only uses black and white, this one is more sepia toned and less text and more pictures. And that may be the last one. That's the last one we have. All right. I see there are a few things in the chat box. I'm going to look at that momentarily. But now I'm going to stop the share and talk a little bit about what we can create after looking at Pendleton's work today. And I think you can do a successful piece today, even if you didn't really understand Pendleton's work, or even if you weren't drawn to his work, or even if you didn't like it at all. I'm hoping that it might spark the creative juices for you today. Here's my idea. I think it would be fun for us to work with collage and to work primarily with just black and white. I want you to play around with how using only those two colors can work for you. And when you use collage, if you have newsprint, I thought it would be interesting to just work with newsprint. Just work as much as possible with black and white. Think about text. Think about words. You might want to think about ideas or concepts that are meaningful for you. So for example, I'm very much concerned with the environment and the climate crisis that we are starting to live through in our current history. And I might focus the words that I use on that particular issue. Maybe you are concerned about racial injustice in this country or environmental injustice in this country, or maybe it's women's rights. Think about issues or ideas. Maybe your main idea could be, what is art? And start thinking about words that you would like the viewer of your artwork to focus on. Then isolate a few words. Don't try and encompass the entire issue. So if you're focusing on the climate crisis, you might just want to use the two words climate crisis, or you might want to think about global warming and think about a few of the letters in those ideas. I would start with a small piece of paper and in pencil, sketch out the composition that you might want to create. Think about your background as well as the foreground of your picture. Think about the way Pendleton played with size. Make some of your shapes and letters large, some small. And think about texture. Do you want your background to be textured or smooth? Perhaps you might want to start by painting the whole background black and work by putting white letters. You might want to divide your background into oblongs or rectangles and work within those shapes as your guidelines or parameters. Or you could work within ovals or circles or triangles. Think about ways that you can organize the space of your image. Questions. So this is a challenging project. Please do ask questions, because your questions will help others.
I love what you said, Liz. If you could possibly repeat it, I don't want to get the word, I don't want to translate the words. You said, think about the feeling you want to evoke or something in the viewer.
Yeah. You might want to evoke a feeling in the viewer or a thought or an idea. Look at all the research those names made us do. And I'm looking in the chat now, Jane. Some of the information you found is so surprising to me. Hermes was an engineer from the destroyed Atlantis and was an incarnation of Jesus Christ. Who knew? I looked at that and immediately thought Hermes the designer. And I was trying to figure out, why did he put that name in there? So maybe you want your viewer to question in some way or think deeply in a new way about the words you're using. So there's a lot to think about in this piece, and we have quite a bit of time. That's why I'm suggesting start with a small piece of paper first to work out your ideas. I would work compositionally. Once you have your main idea, work out your composition. I like to start with a rectangle, and then within the rectangle, divide up my space with smaller geometric shapes, maybe rectangles, maybe ovals, maybe triangles, maybe all three. And within those smaller shapes, how am I going to collage or use paint or both to create my image? So this can be a mixed media conceptual piece. I think I'm going to start large on my easel. I think that may help folks, might jumpstart you if you're having difficulties. So I'm going to get everything in place. And if you like, you can watch me to get started. But as always, I prefer that you focus on your own work, not on what I'm doing. Sometimes art can be uncomfortable. And I think that's okay too. Art doesn't always have to be pretty and pleasing. Sometimes art can be thought-provoking and challenging. So again, to start, I'm going to frame my composition by making a large rectangle. Artists like to do this because it gives us guidelines. It kind of constricts the amount of space in which we're going to work, and it helps us to plan and think ahead and organize. And I think because climate change is my focus, rather than geometric shapes, now I'm thinking I might go organic. And I'm going to divide my composition into shapes that are more reminiscent of a landscape. So I have a big oval here, and I've made a kind of a horizon line of an undulating mountain or hill through the middle. Not sure what's going to go down here. Something a little more sharp edged in the corner. So now that I've organized the larger space, now I have to think about, do I want to move to collage first, or do I want to think about using paint first? And I'm not sure. I think I'm going to go for paint first, which is going to be a little bit constricting because I may need to wait for the paint to dry before I can actually start using collage, but we'll see what happens. And I am only going to use black and white and gray. I'm going to follow my own directions and restrict my palette. See what happens. Now, I'm different from Mr. Pendleton. I find abstraction not freeing at all. I feel there are many restrictions to doing abstraction, but that could just be my artistic training. I find that I have to think and plan ahead more when I'm doing abstract work. But again, every artist is different. As always, I'm going to start with lighter colors first. And I'm using a big brush because I'm working with the larger background shapes. And because I want lighter colors first, I'm just taking a tiny bit of the black and mixing it with a lot of the white. And adding just a bit more black. Now, if you're doing collage work, you can look for specific words and images to represent the concept or idea that you're trying to convey, just like Pendleton does. I really enjoy working in black and white. I hope you find it fun as well. So I'm applying the paint very roughly, inspired by Pendleton's love for texture. I'm not smoothing out my brush strokes at all. Doing it kind of sloppy and messy. Those of you who are interested in learning more about how to use value in your work, this project is a good exercise, I think. See how many different shades of gray you can come up with. So I'm not even working with text yet. I'm laying out the composition of my background. Once I've organized the overall space, I think I can start tackling how I'm going to use words or letters. And I might look for a quote. I have some favorite environmental heroes. Pendleton uses quotes from people from history. That might be appropriate. And you could do that too, of course. So I've pretty much laid down my composition for the background. There's my layout. Now I want to think about text. Thinking about using the names of my environmental heroes. I'm looking for quotes. And I'm thinking about, do I want my text to be big? Do I want it to be small? I have no idea. I don't know what direction I'm going in, and that's okay. I like challenges. I'll stop looking for quotes. Now I'm looking at images. And I think I'm finding my direction. I think I'm going to take black and white pictures and start cutting letters out of them and see how that looks. And the cool thing about this is it'll give the paint time to dry. So I have this wonderful photograph, and not that I want to cut her up, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start making letters out of her. She's gorgeous. What kind of letters? I think I'm going to do big block letters. And one of my big environmental heroes is a woman named Sylvia Earle. Oh, I can put her name and that other artist I mentioned, Glenn Ligon, in the chat box for you. Another great African-American artist who uses text in his work is Glenn Ligon. And then my environmental hero, if you're interested, is Sylvia Earle. I'm taking this image of this beautiful woman and I'm cutting her up. drew the letter first on the newsprint. Let's see. This is not what- I like this. So I'm going to continue creating more letters. Plug in the hot glue gun. Now, you, of course, do not have to use collage. Remember, Adam Pendleton also painted and drew his letters. Or you can use collage and paint. Think mixed media. I really like how newsprint looks. Also wonderful how any everyday material like an old newspaper can become art media. That's what the Dadaists loved. So now, though, I have to move from the easel to the table. Continue working. We'll try and angle my laptop so that you can see what I'm doing. Now, with any kind of collage work, I recommend that you do not glue down until you're absolutely certain where you want the letters to go or the pieces of paper to go. In this case, it's letters. Now I'm thinking about my letters as shapes, not letters. And I'm thinking more in terms of where do they look good, not necessarily is it important that they spell out a word. So I'm playing around with the position of the shapes of the letters. I'm trying to be playful. Even though we're in a climate crisis, I'm trying to maintain hope and be optimistic about the future. So I want my composition to be a little bit off balance and even a little bit amusing if possible. So here I go. I'm starting to glue down. Up on the easel. Let's see the results. And I think as I move forwards, my idea, my concept is starting to evolve. I think I'm just going to do names of female environmentalists. So thinking of people like Greta Thunberg and Jane Goodall. And I may just do their first names. That'll be fun. Rachel Carson. Let's do Rachel next. My favorites. Or maybe I'll alternate first names. With last names. All kinds of directions to go in with this project. Let's see if we turn out the light. The glare. It's a little bit easier to see what I've done. Art and Rachel. And go back to a flat surface. Play around with the placement of the letters before gluing down. More step completed. And I'm seeing that I want more contrast. So I might start adding paint at this point to emphasize the letters so that they stand out more. I might start painting letters. I'm going to step back for a second and think about this before I decide which direction to go in. Not sure. Really like the newsprint on the gray and black very much. I'm going to head into using paint again though. Suddenly felt inspired to do that. See what happens. And we have about 10 more minutes till we stop to talk about our next class and do sharing. I'm going to introduce the new artist. Actually, at this stage in my piece, I'm texturing the edges of the letters and blending them more into the background. I think it works better with the composition of my piece. And there's ways to go with that. I'm liking it. But I want to soften the letters edges more. Oh, you can't even see that part. There you go. All right. Who is our next and final artist? Gosh, I can't believe we're at the end of February. Give me one moment. Okay. Here's our next artist. Our next artist for the final artist for Black History Month is named Elias Syme or Syme, I'm not sure. He is an Ethiopian artist and he takes everyday objects and turns them into the most incredible assemblage. So your assignment for the coming days is to look for little bits and pieces of things around your home. And if possible, if you have a small box, like a shoe box, put your collection of things into that box. Have some good glue, like Elmer's glue, set aside for next week's project as well, because it'll be helpful. Or if you have a hot glue gun, that would work too. Oops, I forgot to show everyone. Here's his name, Elias Syme or Syme. I'm not sure about the pronunciation on this artist. I will research it before the next class. All right, how are we doing on this week's project? Suzanne, you're first in my queue. Would you like to share? Yeah, you're looking eager.
So I'll show, can I show what I did this week and then 2 weeks ago, the portrait?
Sure.
So this one isn't finished.
Nice.
But what I'm playing with is immigration. And so I have migrate and then the I am, and I'm having people on the I am.
Wow.
I'm interested conceptually in trying to do fences with the other. It's kind of still in the process, but that's my conceptual.
Very, very, very creative. I love it. And I love the touch of red with the very strong black. I like your compositional things that you did too, the giant A and the big E. Terrific.
So I still have to finish, and then I will show you. So if there's anything
Yes.
that
See my text that I sent you about this one?
I did. I thank you. And I also wanted to know if this was anything that you think I still need to work on with this in terms of anything. I don't know.
I think this is finished, Suzanne.
Okay.
Finished. Yeah, a slight thing. The iris or retina, the colored portion of the left eye, you might want to make it slightly bigger. The whites look a little bit too large.
Which one? This one or this one? The one with the hand or without the hand?
The one with the hand.
This one
Yeah.
here looks too big. This side?
The
And make
the whites look a little too big. I would enlarge the color.
eye on both sides.
Well, more on the side closest to the nose. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that side. Okay,
enlarge it slightly.
okay.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Liz.
It's really, really great. And it's a self-portrait.
Yeah, yeah. I took a picture of myself like a selfie, and I was inspired by our artist. I can't pronounce his name. Boa, whatever. B-O-A. How do you pronounce his name?
You have to,
From Ghana, and I did a lot of finger painting. There's some brush stroke, but all this stuff and this is all finger painting. So I really
oh, yes, I'm blocking his name.
Boafo, I think.
Yes.
But I love the finger painting, and
He was he our first artist in February?
I don't. It was not last week because I missed last week, but the week before. So I guess so. But I really loved the finger painting aspect of it, and that was inspirational. And he had, when I was looking at his portraits, I was inspired by this because he had two.
Yeah, Amako Boafo.
That's it. He had two portraits where he had the turtleneck covering half the face. So when I took a selfie,
Yeah,
did the same thing based on, his composition, kind of.
yeah, I just put his name in the chat box for everyone.
Is that acrylics?
Yes.
So are there different kinds, or is all acrylics water-based?
Water, it's all water-based. I had one that was high flow, which was the brown, which is more like oil because it doesn't dry as fast, and the rest were, very quick drying.
It's great. I love the motion of the hand and the turtleneck.
Yeah, the lines in the turtleneck are really cool. All right, thank you, Suzanne. Esty, you're next.
So soon. Okay. I did two. One.
Oh, wow. Wow. You were inspired by that Benin head, I think.
Yeah, I found Joseph somewhere, and I
like this very much.
So I started with newspaper, but then, it is. And I did the mask that I really liked, but it didn't come out as.
No, I like this too.
Oh, I love it.
They're both finished. I like this very much.
You do?
Really good.
Okay,
Beautiful.
thanks.
Yay. I'm so excited because I thought this was going to be too challenging and folks were going to have trouble, but I'm wrong. You're doing great. Awesome. All right, Robin.
Okay, so this was a photograph that I copied in black and white, and I just was lying around, and because we were doing black and white, I decided to paint it. It's of a man that was with us for 8 years, and he was a good friend of my young son. And so I just
Beautiful.
made it in black and white. Yeah,
It's
kind of-
gorgeous.
well, I love the photo, and then I wanted to paint it separately, but I never got to do that. So I thought, why not do something with it today? So there they are.
Fabulous
Beautiful.
composition. Great positive, negative shapes. This is a very powerful piece, Robin.
Thank
Love
you.
it.
Thanks so much. The photograph was powerful in and of itself, thankfully. Thank you.
Wow, congrats.
Thank you.
Well done. Heather. Woo, I'm so thrilled.
I'm a little tired today.
Join the club. It's full moon, baby. Oh, this is great.
Whoa.
This is
I was
great.
working with
This is great.
habitat or habitation. I find it a little too literal. This is dictionary.
The definition.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it on the corrugated background.
Mm. All right.
I'm
tired.
always, I want it
Great.
on a flat black, the whole thing mounted on black.
Whole thing,
Yeah,
like including that.
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Frame it in black. It'll pull the whole thing together.
That-
Yeah. Yup. Fab. Just fabulous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. Get some rest.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Susan.
Okay. I have many issues that are near and dear to me, but one of them is women's reproductive rights.
Woohoo!
And because I was a sonographer to fetuses for many years, I had access to these 3D images. Plus, this is a drawing of a pelvis, and I made a copy of it that I did when I was at NYU Langone. And I'm really, really frightened about what's going to happen. And I saw many, many women who needed to have terminations, not because they wanted to. So this could be a major catastrophe for this country and women. So that's where
So a suggestion,
Mhm.
maybe this is beautiful. I want some of the shapes to have a little more emphasis. So some white outline perhaps.
Okay, white paint, maybe?
Yeah. Not a lot though, Susan, like where
Mhm.
this baby's foot is underneath whatever this shape is. See where the baby's toes are? And
Well,
then,
there's a few.
yeah, right there, right where your finger was.
Okay.
And underneath the black shape, underneath the baby's foot,
Mhm.
maybe a little white there. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then
Okay.
this big baby's head in the bottom right-hand corner,
Mhm.
maybe some bright white outlining the back of that baby's head.
Okay. All right.
And then I want to see the whole thing mounted on white
Okay. All right.
to
Will do.
frame it in white.
Mhm. Okay.
Wow, this is so powerful.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I'm
really.
with you. It's our future is very scary.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, this is one of the many issues that I'm concerned about. So, yeah. But I worked in in women's health for
Yeah.
30 years. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for this powerful piece.
Thanks. Thank you.
Put it on Instagram, make the world know.
Yes.
Thank
Hopefully.
you, Susan. Well done.
Thank you.
Pat, are you up for sharing? I hope so.
Okay. I warm up with some playing with text. So I was thinking about typography. I don't know if you can read it. It's like I miss out the letter. It's like the kids game that I play with my daughter that you fill, and then the next one is this letter, and then it's go on.
Yes. Yes. So you're making new words on each line.
So it's just a warm up.
I like it.
Because it reminds me a lot about like graphic design and typography. And another one I did is like you put the letter in color, but then it's another color. But then since we're only using black, so I just do like red, but I have a cherry here. Just that's my idea.
They're great conceptually.
It was
Yeah,
just,
keep working on the images.
I got this Chinese ink I'm playing with, so I did Chinese words.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's just fun. Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome, Pat. Always love seeing your work. Thank you for sharing. Jane.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for all the sharing today. Really beautiful. So inspiring to, especially to understand what others are getting out onto the page from inside their mind and their hearts.
Thank you.
So I won't make excuses for who I am. Everybody knows who I am and where I think I am. That's a waste of time.
Never make excuses. Never.
It's just not worth the trouble. So, because I can't get to where I might want to be unless I just keep going. So why waste my time pausing about the fact that I'm beginning or, anyway. But I also was distracted today because I'm leaving momentarily to go to the city and see your exhibit, Liz. So I'm excited.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, a phrase came to me as we began, and I started developing it. And then just while, who was the last person who shared? Pat. While Pat was sharing, a couple of more words came up. So
wow, look at this. Who wins?
Who owns?
Who owns Earth? Love this. Look.
Oh, thank you. And then some words that I just jotted down for future, consideration. Chaos, civilization being, in my view, like the opposite ends of things. If we try to imagine, who owns this beautiful, vibrant place that we live on. So that's and it's, it's a beginning.
It's beautiful.
And I guess I need to work on integrating it so that it's clearer, but I plenty of time for that.
It's a major concept, kid.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I like your contrast of dark and light. You're headed in the right direction.
Thank you. I also have been thinking about yesterday, and I think I'm going to cut these into pieces and then reassemble them.
Okay.
I think that'll be interesting and fun. So.
And we want to see, bring them to next week's class.
All right. Thank you.
Franz May, thank you for sharing.
Hello.
Hello, Franz May. Are you going to share? I can't.
Yes.
You have to go on camera for me to.
Oh, right.
Good.
Sorry. So I was inspired by the phrase, if I can dance to it, it's not my revolution, from Emma Goldman. And I was just trying to do kind of protest sign and play with the black and white letters, but I couldn't fit the whole phrase, so I cut it and then I wrote the revolution on the end.
It's wonderful use of black and white and gray tone.
Yeah.
And I like that you varied your typeface. And I like that you outlined. Really cool. Really cool.
Beautiful.
Well done. Well,
Hard. I must say it's very hard to do.
it's very difficult when you have a limited palette. It really is. It becomes more complicated, not less. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well done, Francois. Oh, I'm so thrilled with the work we did today. Lizzie, you're next, but you want to say, oh, Lizzie, you're available. Okay, cool.
Right. Okay, so
Thank you.
everybody's stuff was really good, so I'm a little embarrassed, but aesthetically.
No, never compare your work to anyone else's. And
Yeah.
it's great to show work in progress because you can get suggestions and ideas. If you're not happy with your work, try not to present it in a negative way. Just be open to the suggestions that you're going to get, because it'll open your mind up to new possibilities. So let's see.
All right, so my first thought was a Venn diagram and how things intersect. So I was doing the past, present, and future.
Wow.
And in this center is a bleeding heart flower.
Wow, yes.
And then I found this book, which it says Sins of Our Fathers, a novel, because the more I read, I've been reading a lot of historical novels lately, and how much our history is written selectively by people in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And also the sins of our fathers personally. I have stories. But anyhow, but for the future, we have choices, and what will they be? So I kind of got more sidetracked on the story than on the art.
But it's starting to work visually really well. I would suggest that you get a solid background, like black, mounted on solid black, because I think it's going to bring all the separate pieces together and make the whole thing work. And then I would make the black outlines that you have around the Venn diagram and this wonderful curved line here and the black line at the top of this rectangle here, I would make them a little wider and darker. So black background, darken some of your black outlines. I think it's going to be beautiful.
Well, thank you. It was a stretch.
The whole thing was difficult conceptually and visually to achieve anything. So I'm thrilled. You did great.
Oh, thanks.
Conceptual art to me is the hardest to achieve, really. All right. And Lorraine, do you have the capability to go visual? I think you cannot. So Lorraine, will you send me images? Okay, great, Lorraine. Send me JPEGs as always. So we have come to the end of our class. Start collecting bits and pieces for next week's assemblage, and have a great week.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Liz.
You are welcome.
Be well, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Wonderful class.